Wilkins, your favorite fifth grade teacher here, Mrs. Wilkins, and the newest member of our class, Kylan. I'm here to give a little math help for your lesson today. It comes from our fifth grade My Math book, the second volume. So go ahead and grab your math book if you have it. You also need something to write with, maybe a handy dandy notebook, and of course, your thinking cap, okay? And a little bit of perseverance, okay? Because we know fractions can be a little challenging. So let's hop right into it. Are you ready? Good. Let's take a quick second to review. We are working with fractions in this lesson. Remember that a fraction is made up of a numerator and a denominator. I like to say that the fraction bar means divide. The fraction bar means divide. Say it with me. The fraction bar means divide. The fraction bar means divide. Say it with me. The fraction bar means divide. The fraction bar means divide. So if you notice on my fraction, my example, I changed my fraction bar to a division symbol. Remember, your denominator is your divisor, okay? And your numerator is your dividend. And if we set up a problem traditionally, your denominator is your divisor, goes outside the box. Your numerator is your dividend, goes inside the box. Good. Take a moment to get this example in your handy dandy notebook. Don't forget to put that the fraction bar means divide. The fraction bar means divide because that's going to be helpful in today's lesson. Now that you've taken that note, let's go ahead and hop into the problem that we're going to solve together today. Please remember, if you're showing work or you're doing work in a Google Doc, it's very helpful for your teacher for you to label your paper so they know exactly what it is that you're working on. So we are going to be working from our My Math book. And in the My Math book, this is volume 2, we're going to be on pages 589 and 590. So I'm going to put that on the paper. That's going to be really helpful. Now we are going to be talking about question number 1. And I don't know if you know this, but question number 1 actually requires you to use the example on page number 589. All right? So let's go ahead and read the question that we're going to be working through together. And remember, how many times does an average person need to read a word problem before they solve? How many times do I say? I always say read it 3 times before you say you don't get it. So let's go ahead and do the first read together. It says, model math. In the first activity, how would it change if 1/2 was written as a fraction with a denominator of 100? Would the result be the same? Explain. That refers to the example on page 589. Let's look at the example on page 589 and read the problem again. This time, highlight or underline the most important information that we need to solve. In the first activity, how would it change if 1/2 was written as a fraction with a denominator of 100? Would the result still be the same? Explain. So in the example on page 589, they have 1/2. And then they have 1/2 with an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 10. Now the denominator is the bottom half of the fraction. So they wrote 1/2 as an equivalent fraction with a denominator that has 10. So what would the numerator be if it's going to be a equivalent of fraction with a denominator of 10? I know. Remember, I'd like to say whatever you do to the bottom of the fraction, you must do to the top. So what number can you multiply by 2 to get to 10? What number can you multiply by 2 to get the 10? Good. 5. Whatever you do to the bottom of the fraction, you must do to the top. That means if I multiply the bottom of the fraction by 5, I'm also going to multiply my numerator by 5. So what's 1 times 5? Good. 5. So now in question number 1 on page 590, they say, how would 1/2 change if it were written as a fraction with a denominator of 100? So this time they changed the denominator from 10 to 100. Now, what would the numerator be? That's the question we need to answer. So we answer that by saying, what number can I multiply by 2 to get to 100? I'll say that again. What number can I multiply by 2 to get to 100? I know I can multiply by 2 50 to get to 100. And if I multiply my denominator by 50, then what do I have to do? Multiply my numerator by 50. Whatever you do to the bottom of the fraction, you must do to the top. All right, I like to say that the numerator and denominator are like sometimes like when your brother and sister are being a little bit too annoying. Like when it's like they're annoying brothers and little sisters. Whatever you want, your brother wants. Whatever you have, your sister wants. So I like to say that the numerator and denominator are like little annoying brothers and little sisters sometimes. Whatever you do to the bottom, you must do to the top. Okay? If you have an ice cream, guess what? Your brother wants an ice cream. If you go to the mall, guess what? Your sister wants to go to the mall. So let's go ahead and apply multiplication. What is 1 times 50? Good. 50. Now we can answer our question from page 590. It says, how would 1/2 change if it were written as a fraction with a denominator of 100? Cool. Now we can write our answer down. I would say the numerator changes to what? The numerator changes to, what did our numerator change to? In the first problem on page 589, when we had an equivalent fraction, the numerator was 5. Now when we change the denominator to 100, the numerator changed to what? The numerator changed to 50. So that means if you drew a model, you would have to have 50 equal parts. Okay? The result would be 50 hundredths. How do we say this fraction? How do we say this fraction? How do you say it? You tell me. How do you say this fraction? The result would be 50 hundredths, and that's how we write the fraction as a decimal. Good. Got it? Good. Now, let's try another one together. We are going to take a look at your My Math book, and we're using volume 2. And this time, we're going to work from page 591. On page 591, I would like to start with question number 6. So I'm going to label in the corner question number 6. Question number 6 has a fraction that reads 3/5. The directions say, use math tools to shade each model. Then write each fraction as a decimal. Now, my 5th graders are great with models, so I'm going to show you how to change these fractions to decimals. Now, what was I saying to you? The fraction bar means divide. The fraction bar means divide. The fraction bar means divide. Now, there are 2 ways that you can change this fraction to a decimal. You can set up a division problem. In that model I showed you, I said the denominator is your what? Divisor. Good. And the numerator is your what? It's your dividend. It goes inside the box. So I could set up a division problem to change 3/5 to a decimal to be able to shade my model. So let's set up the division problem. So my denominator is my divisor, goes outside the box. My numerator is my dividend, goes inside the box. Now I have 5 divided by 3. But wait a minute. There's no way I can divide that this way. So what do I need to do? We learned this in the last chapter. Put in a decimal point and a 0. Now we can divide. I say, how many times does 5 go into 30? How many times does 5 go into 30? We're going to ignore the decimal right now and say, how many times does 5 go into 30? Good. 6 times. What is 6 times 5? What is 6 times 5? 6 times 5 is 30. Subtract, I'm left with 0. Do not bring the decimal down. In this case, we bring it up. So our final answer is 6/10. So that means 3/5 as a decimal is equivalent to 6/10. Good. Now, remember in math, there's always more than one way to solve a problem. You could also change 3/5 to a decimal and know how much to shade by doing this, getting an equivalent fraction. Equivalent signifies I need to put in my equal sign. So to get the equivalent fraction, okay, and I know my model is out of 100, okay, if you look at your model on page 591, it is out of 100, okay? So I could say, what number times 5 gets me to 100? What number times 5 gets me to 100? 20. What's 20 times 5? You said it, 100. Whatever I do to the bottom of the fraction, I must do to the top, right? And now I'm going to apply multiplication. What is 3 times 20? What is 3 times 20? 60. And 60 hundredths, I write that as a decimal by putting a 6 in the tens place and a 0 in the hundreds place. Now, is 6/10 equivalent to 60 hundredths? Yep, it is. It's the same thing. If you X off the 0, you notice they will be equivalent. So those are 2 strategies that you can use to change a fraction to a decimal. Now, do you got it? Or would you like to do another one together? Great. Thanks for staying with me. We will do one more together. Let's do question number 4 on page 591. I have the fraction 3/20. And I like to say, the fraction bar means divide. The fraction bar means divide. Say it with me. The fraction bar means divide. Now, let's set up a division problem. Like that model I told you to get in your notebook, the denominator is your divisor. Your numerator is your dividend. It goes inside the box. So let's set up the division problem. Your denominator is your divisor. Your numerator is your dividend. Goes inside the box. I have 20 divided by 3. Wait a minute. I can't divide that this way. So what do I need to do? Put in a decimal point and 2 zeros this time. Let's go ahead and divide. I say, how many times does 20 go into 30? How many times does 20 go into 30? Once. 1 times 20 is, good, 20. Subtract, I'm left with 10. Bring down the 0. How many times does 20 go into 100? Or you could say, what number can I multiply by 20 to get me closest to 100? Good. 5. 5 times 20 is what? What is 5 times 20? 100. 100 minus 100 is 0. You cannot have a remainder and a decimal. Now you don't drop the decimal down. Instead, you bring it up. So that means 3/20 as a decimal would be 15 hundredths. Now it should be easy for you to shade your model. You would shade 1/10. Okay, shade in 1/10 and shade in 5 hundredths. So go ahead and shade your model on your own. Shade 1/10 and 5 hundredths. Great. Got it? Good. Kiss your brain because you're smart. Let's review. This model, this example is going to be the key for your lessons today and tomorrow. So make sure you have it in your notes. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Say bye, Kylan.